Good evening.
Hello. Good evening, Emma. How are you tonight?
I'm very well as always, Andy. How are you?
Fantastic. Can I ask what's on your T-shirt this evening?
It's a wit and wisdom.
Oh, okay. Fantastic.
Yeah,
We've got a bit of a different evening this evening. We're going to do a quarter of an hour or so discussion about the person of Jesus, and then we're going to have a chance for people to ask questions, and we'll debate those and see if we make a fool of ourselves doing those kind of things. There's a video as well, someone talking what Jesus means to them, and quite a lot of interesting quotes I've got from people through the week as well. So who do people think Jesus was? A wise man? A spiritual leader? Completely crazy? Was he an alien? Or was he, as Christians believe, actually the Son of God? Many folks struggle with church religion, but do they struggle with the person of Jesus? Maybe not. Maybe sometimes they are somewhat intrigued. That's my introduction.
Good introduction. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Em.
Yeah, so we've got some pictures to kind of kick off our discussion. We've got a number of 6 different pictures. So here's the first 3, and they're pictures of Jesus from different cultures. So, Andy, do you recognise picture number 1?
Well, I do, because it's actually from my generation, isn't it? Robert Powell, I believe his name was who was a bit of a hunk, I'm told, in his day. And that is how many people think Jesus was blue-eyed. He hasn't got blonde hair there as well, but quite a good-looking sort of chap. And the reality is Jesus probably wasn't that good-looking. Sorry to say that, folks, but probably wasn't.
And wouldn't have had blue eyes, right? I mean, pretty unlikely.
Definitely not. Or such lovely white skin either. He might have had a beard. That works.
That was I think it was the late 70s. It's this image from Jesus of Nazareth.
You wouldn't remember, would you?
I have seen bits of Jesus of Nazareth. It's really long. It's about 7 hours, the full length one.
Yeah.
And then the middle one is kind of an interesting one, isn't it? I always think of the phrase "gentle Jesus, meek and mild" when I look at that picture number 2.
Is this like Disney Jesus, do you think?
Kind of looks like Disney Jesus, doesn't it? With Bambi there and the little fox looking up at him adoringly. Yeah, I kind of struggle with that picture, Andy, if I'm honest. Yeah.
I thought we'd just include it to show how some people might, as you're saying, Jesus meek and mild. But we're not sure he was quite as meek and mild as people like him to be. Yeah.
No, we might.
I mean, you particularly like picture number 3. That's why I included that one. Why did you like that one?
Yeah, I do like picture number 3 for a number of reasons. It shows we've got Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, and it's actually a picture of them escaping to Egypt. So the Bible tells us that after Jesus' birth, they were in danger. Joseph has a dream, and he's told, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and escape to Egypt." And so they were refugees. I also like the fact that their skin color actually in this picture is probably much closer to what Jesus actually would have looked like when he's alive. You know, Jesus would have had olive skin or very dark skin. He would not have had blonde hair. He almost certainly wouldn't have had blue eyes, and so on. So that kind of family feels a bit more real, but also kind of brings out the fact that he had a really difficult start in life, even when he was a tiny.
Yeah. Which I think, especially in this day and age, because obviously refugees are in the news or a lot of the time. Folks, if you want to comment on these pictures, say I like number 1 because of whatever it might be, please feel free to do that as we go through.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Should we move on to the next 3? That'd be good.
Yeah.
This is a bit more interesting.
So we had a bit of an argument about this one, didn't we, Andy?
Us? Argue?
Yeah, because I made you put the first one in, didn't I? Well, we're strongly suggesting
number 4. Explain number 4 then, Emma, to me. Explain number 4, what that's all about then.
So this is a sculpture that was created in 1975, I believe, by Edwina Sandys, and it's called Christa, and it's an image of a female Christ on the cross. Now, some people find it quite unsettling, and there've been churches that have felt uncomfortable about hosting this sculpture. But I really love it as a woman because, not because it tells me Jesus was a woman, because it's pretty clear from the historical record Jesus was a man, but it reminds me that Jesus is for me as well as for men. So I really love that.
Now, I totally agree. And obviously, at the time when Jesus came into the earth, women were how do I put it nicely, second-class citizens, property, not treated well. And one of the things that Jesus did, which made him fairly unique, was treating people as people rather than as male, female, etc., etc., etc. And that's one of the things I really like about Jesus, that actually he did treat people as people, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And it's interesting as well because one of the books of the Bible called Luke, actually by a doctor, particularly then emphasizes Jesus's love and how he treated women appropriately and all the rest of it. We're going to talk a bit later on about what's going on probably at the moment in the world with the riots and so on. But I think Jesus would actually be for humans in all their different races and religions and sexuality and the rest of it.
Mm. Yeah, so then, so the picture 5, angry Jesus.
I know. And some people, I think, view God like this. They think God is actually pointing the finger. I must have towards that, mustn't I, rather than just at my face. But pointing the finger and saying, "How dare you, sir? How dare you?" or something like that. And do you think Jesus got angry, or do you think Jesus was this mild and meek person we talk about?
I think it probably depends who and what he was looking at. So I guess the question, when we look at angry Jesus, who do we think, or what do we think he's looking at? I think if Jesus was here now as a human being and saw what happened to George Floyd in America, and I think he'd be furious. I think he would be looking in anger. Someone suggested to me this week that he'd be there at the protest. I think they're probably right, actually. But does Jesus look at every person and watch everything they do wrong and kind of slam them for it? No, I don't think so. I think Jesus is merciful and has compassion. I think that's what the life of Jesus tells me. But some things absolutely made him angry.
Because if Jesus was, and I would say is God, it gives us a view maybe about how God thinks about things and reacts to things and cares for people, but also can get quite cross about those who take advantage, those who rip people off, those who treat people really badly and have no compassion and so on. I think you're right. I think you're right. Can I just say that I love picture 6? It's called Laughing Jesus. I've no idea who it's by, but I've actually got a postcard in my office of this. And I just think it's hilarious because I think so many things that Jesus said were just so funny. We don't necessarily understand the in-jokes because we don't necessarily understand the culture. Well, I don't, Emma. You as a devout theologian, I'm sure understand all the nuances. That's the word we used this week, wasn't it, between us?
I'm not much of a theologian, certainly not much of a biblical scholar. So I don't have that kind of insight into the text, I'm afraid.
I was just trying to build you up there, so.
I certainly think Jesus would have had a sense of humour. Yeah.
Oh, for goodness sake. Yeah. Well, I think some of the disciples he actually chose. I mean, someone like Peter, who I can identify with Peter because open mouth, put foot in it, says things without thinking. You've never seen me do that, have you?
I don't feel it'd be safe to comment.
Yeah, yes, you would. maybe not on film as you are at the moment, but at other times maybe. No, I am somebody who basically speaks before I think, and I'm trying to improve on that. But there we go. There we go.
We all have things to try and improve.
So we've currently got no comments about the picture, so we'll probably have to move on. You said something earlier on about historical records prove that actually Jesus was a man and not a woman. Can you tell us a bit about that? Because did Jesus actually exist, do you think? Is there enough data out there to explain that?
Yeah, I mean, there's very good evidence that Jesus, as a historical figure, did live. I mean, there's a lot. It's often kind of a cliche, but it's like, there's more evidence for the existence of Jesus than Julius Caesar. I'm not sure if there are numbers involved, and that may be slightly apocryphal. But the fact is that there's the Bible itself, the New Testament itself, that talks about the life of Jesus. But there are other documents outside of the New Testament. For example, just the first Jewish historian who wrote about Jesus. So people have different views about what the life of Jesus meant and who exactly Jesus was. People have different opinions about Jesus, but pretty much everyone agrees he did exist.
Great. Well, should we watch his video then?
Yeah. So this is our friend Luke explaining what Jesus means to him.
So, what is Jesus to me? Jesus is a promise. He's a way of God showing us how much he loves us. He was a way of communicating with us and leaving a lasting impression. He was left as a light that we could follow in ways to both become better people and to be able to meet with God. He was a method, if you like, an example.
Interesting.
I've actually moved my camera, and now it's the complete. That's better. That's as it should be. I'm told. Eye level.
Yeah, there we go.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm just fiddling my camera here while you were talking. While Luke was talking.
Yeah, so you're saying that Jesus was a kind of a method of God speaking to us, or of helping us to live and helping us to know God. Really interesting.
Yeah, I know we both asked various people, and I've got a few quotes here. I've asked people, not necessarily all Christians, but people who were happy to kind of give me an answer. The majority preferred to give me a quote rather than do a video. There we go. There's the first one I've got. Jesus is a perfect example of how to truly live.
Okay, so some resonance with what Luke said there then, because Luke talked about Jesus as an example. Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody else, here's everything I need whenever I need him, my forever friend. He knows me so well, and I hope I give back in the work I do. That's an interesting comment. Friendship is about giving, not simply taking. To sum up in a song, that's an old-fashioned hymn, I think. What a friend we have in Jesus. I was intrigued by the give back in the work I do.
Yeah, this idea of wanting our life to mean something because we're loved by Jesus. Yeah. Sorry, I've been told to say interesting a lot. You can sound the buzzer every time I say it, Andy.
I think we'll get someone to count next week, shall we? I mean, I think Dora's watching, and my friend Andy's certainly watching. So they've probably got little clicker things, can't they, to do that?
You have permission to count.
Yeah, but I say it just because if I say it, then you'll start saying it as well. Jesus is for me a symbol of empathy across multitudes or multiples of culture and religions. They embrace qualities what we as humans should try and replicate. Yeah. This is an interesting one. It's not actually on the screen, this one, because I got this afternoon. Jesus is a Christian sign of God. As a Hindu, I believe people have different ways of believing in God. I got a great long quote from my friend who's a Hindu, which I might explore that more at another time, but because that was a bit she said about Jesus particularly, which I thought was good. Somebody here says, Jesus is my daily conversation, my rock, my refuge, my hiding place, my hope, my journey, my destination. Jesus is who I run from and run to. Run from and run to. Jesus is my saviour, my answer, my question. Jesus is my love, my centre, my Lord. That's a very personal statement, isn't it?
It's very honest as well about running from Jesus as well as running to him. Yeah.
I like the fact it's a journey as well, rather than, I hate that term often as someone who does a bit of training on occasion, but on a journey, not saying we've actually got to completion yet, which I think is good. Somebody else said to me, again, not on the thing here, Jesus is my passion, strength, hope, my everything. That's quite a deep thinking, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very heartfelt. I've got a couple of quotes as well.
Great.
So I'll probably sort of summarise them. So my dad, who we heard from a couple of weeks ago, I asked him the question. He tried to do a video, but his computer let him down. So anyway, he was saying basically that he likes what Jesus taught, but he says, take out the mystical mumbo jumbo. The water into wine, feeding the 5,000 and so on. So kind of interesting. So he's saying, so Dad's saying Jesus.
Sorry, can I go back to the wine thing for a second?
Yeah.
Because I'm very intrigued. This wasn't a little bit of wine. We're talking 180 gallons of wine Jesus made. I just wanted to add that in today, basically. Yeah. And this is not the kind of weak juice that some people have on a Sunday. This is decent claret, if they had claret in those days, or something equivalent. Anyway, sorry, you may continue with your quote about your father now.
Thanks. Yeah, he talked about parallels between Jesus and Socrates as well. And then Caroline made some similar comments. So she was saying there are similarities with other spiritual leaders and other spiritual traditions. So Jesus talked about compassion, charity, contemplation, meaning, the importance of community. And so she would say that she respects Jesus as an influential person who influenced the world, changed the world through the power of the ideas, such as love your neighbour.
Yeah.
But she would also feel the same about Buddha, Prophet Muhammad, Confucius, and so on. So that was interesting. So both of them kind of saying they really like Jesus' teachings, but Dad's kind of saying not so sure about the miracles. And
oh, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, and that question about similarities is an interesting one, isn't it? So Caroline kind of said to me, you know, does that mean that all society is made up God because of the ideas that we all had in common, or is it that we're all seeing the same God and interpreting his ideas through slightly different lenses?
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of either way, I guess.
Well, my Hindu friend actually said she believes we're all worshipping the same God. We're all praying to the same God. For her, what's really important is that you pray regularly. You don't just pray when you're in trouble, as I think some people might do. And I guess many of us learn to pray a lot when we're going through tough times. And maybe at the moment, I think that's been proved by people starting to pray. But for her, it was an ongoing relationship with God as a Hindu. And I found that fascinating, not interesting.
Very good, very good.
Can we have that last quote? Because Jesus said something which probably is quite unique. He said, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. And I don't think the other people have been talking about said something quite as dramatic as that.
Yeah, I mean, my knowledge of other faiths isn't good enough to know for sure, but certainly this is a very often quoted saying of Jesus, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. So that certainly Jesus is the centre of the Christian faith, isn't he? I mean, Christian comes from Jesus Christ, so
yeah,
the identity of Jesus is pretty crucial. Yeah, interesting. Thanks, Tristram. We got a comment from Tristram. I'm with Emma's dad. He's on the mark. Yeah. I think a lot of people would have that view, wouldn't they? You know, that, what Jesus taught, absolutely not so sure about the miracles.
Yeah.
Oh, I said it again. Oh.
That's okay. You're a very interesting person, so that's not a problem, okay? It's interesting because people don't necessarily like the things that Jesus did. So, for example, feeding 5,000 out of a bit of fish and a bit of bread, healing some sick people, controlling the weather on occasion when there were storms and things like that. Also, allegedly, he brought some dead back to life, again, which is fairly unique, I would think.
Yeah, I think there are accounts in other cultures, but it's pretty unusual. Yeah, it's pretty big.
Yeah, but the thing is that gets me is things he actually said. As you said, love your neighbour, forgive those who hurt you, turn the other cheek when people are treating you badly, things like that. He also said that he actually could forgive wrong things, which at the time was thought to be blasphemous, I believe.
Yes, because that was when he forgave people their sins, he was effectively saying that he was God. So was the main reason why he ended up on the cross, which is something we're coming on to next week.
Indeed, we are. Now, I don't know about you. I've just realised I haven't actually done this properly, but we actually said we would both think about who do we think Jesus actually was or is. Have you had a chance to think about that?
It's such a big question, isn't it? I mean, Jesus. It's gonna sound really simple, actually, but I think at heart, I believe Jesus loves me and wants to be my friend. I remember having a conversation a little bit like this life and soul conversation, but back when we were allowed to meet in person, a few years ago now, and we were all talking with a lady who was thinking about becoming a Christian. She was quite interested, but she wasn't sure. We were all talking about what it means to be a Christian, and she seems a bit confused. And I remember kind of saying to her, I know on one level, there's a lot to take in. There's the whole of the Bible. There's all of these beliefs. But I said, in another sense, it's really, really simple. God loves you and wants to be your friend.
Yeah.
That pretty much sums up my faith.
Well, I was thinking about Jesus being an example to follow, about him being my coach, and obviously I'm into coaching, big time, supporting each other, moving people on and things as well. Yeah. But trying to actually explain a relationship I've had with God since I was probably about 16, which, if I'm honest, comes and goes, or has come and gone a little bit over the years. There's times I don't want to be his friend but I think really understanding that by getting to know Jesus, I've actually got a little bit to know God. If Jesus really is God, and that God the Father, I know loves me and cares for me. And I've said before on this course about that thing about trusting God, having to trust him. And I would say I'm on that journey about trying to trust him. And some things I can trust him for very easily, and other things I still panic and wake up in the middle of the night panicking about it. Usually about 3:30, but those sort of things. But there we go. There's a quote from someone who's quite lovely, actually, my wife. So there we go. Yeah, time is moving on. I'm just looking at the wall here. We did say we'd answer a few questions tonight. If anyone's got any other questions they want to throw on the comments, we'll give it a go. One of the questions was posed a couple of weeks ago was, how do you separate atmosphere and spiritual experience? Your dad was talking about music as being a spiritual experience, and maybe that's the kind of thing that this person's asking. Have you got any views on that?
Yes, and it's a really good question, and it's quite a tricky one to answer. And it makes me think of a Christian conference I was at a few years ago called Soul Survivor, as for young people. And unfortunately, it's finished now. They don't run it anymore. So I was there probably about 10 years ago, and they it was like they'd had this big worship meeting, we'd been playing music, and would have been giving a sermon, and then we were all praying, and the atmosphere got really kind of everyone was excited, and people were praying out loud, and people were, and there was a sense of, well, is it real, or are people just hyping it up? Yeah. And I remember the speaker, one of the speakers, kind of coming to the microphone and saying, let's just wait and see what God says to us in prayer. He says, try not to worry too much about people getting excited. Some of it might be made up. Yeah, I guess it could be, but we won't worry about that. We'll just ask God to speak to us. And I thought that was very wise, actually, kind of acting that, yes, it could just be that we love the music. It could just be we're feeling excited. We've seen a beautiful sunset or whatever. But I do believe that God speaks to human beings. I believe he doesn't only speak to people who call themselves Christians. I believe he speaks to all people.
Yeah, agreed.
In different kinds of ways. But it's quite hard for us sometimes to figure out, well, is it God or is it me?
Yeah, I know. And sometimes I think people have said, oh, it must be God, therefore I'll go and do this and go and do that and all the rest of it. And we'll talk more about maybe how God, we believe, does speak in the future. Somebody asked last week, what do we mean by success in life? We quoted a Harvard study about people, about success and things as well. And we talked a bit about that again. But I guess our success for different people is something different, isn't it? For some people, success is having the house they've always wanted, or having the family they've always wanted, or having enough money in the bank to retire at 46 or something. So I guess it depends a little bit by that. And you mentioned, I think it was your brother who had said about, nobody said on their gravestone, I wish I'd been in the office more, or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah. And so I think a lot of people point to relationship. That's the thing in their life. I think the issue, the question of work is an interesting one, isn't it? I do think as human beings, we kind of have this innate for our life to achieve something with our lives, but achievement could be all sorts of things. So for some people, bringing up children is their achievement, kind of their life's work, or caring for others, creating art. Some people do love to make money, and some people, I mean, look at Bill Gates. He he created this incredible business empire, and now he's using his enormous funds to try and solve huge problems in the world, like malaria.
Yeah.
Incredible. I was quite skeptical for a while, and then I kind of was reading the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation give huge amounts of money for very specific projects to make real differences like that.
Which is great. We're about 8 to 9, so we've got another few minutes. A question asked last week that I kind of gulped a bit at, and you were very, very good as usual. Why we are created sick and then commanded to be well?
Yeah.
And I wasn't even sure what the question actually meant. And we did talk about it a little bit a couple of days ago.
So I think that was Tristram's question. I noticed he's here tonight. So Tristram, if you wanted to comment and sort of clarify that at all, I'll say what I think he meant by it, and obviously you can correct me if I've got this wrong. I think Tristram was kind of saying Christianity is always telling us to stop sinning and to do better, to live the lives God would want us to live.
Yeah.
Why did God create us sinful in the first place? I think that's what Tristram's kind of trying to ask, which is a good point. I mean, I don't believe that God created us sinful as such. Like, I don't believe God created us as kind of doing things wrong. I don't think he wanted us to do that. But I believe God gives us free will, that God chose to give people free will. He doesn't want to control us like puppets. And if you give someone free will, if they're free to do what they want, then they're free not to love you. They're free to walk away from you. They're free to do things that might be harmful to themselves, harmful to others. So that would be a large part of my response.
Yeah. I think we're planning to explore that next week. And if I just don't explain this, but just say next week we are going to use the initials HTMU to try and explain some of this. But let's not give it away what it actually stands for. And please don't put it on the comments, anybody, at the moment, because that's our secret for next week.
HTMU. What?
HTMU.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Great. Well, no one's asked any more questions, so I think we've got off fairly lightly at the moment.
Yeah, we have, haven't we? What about this question that Caroline posed then? So she was saying that different religions across the world and different cultures have come up with similar ideas to Jesus. So what Jesus says isn't entirely unique. Like the golden rule, for example, treat others the way you'd want to be treated. Jesus says that, but others have said similar things as well. How do you make sense of that, Andy? What would you say to that?
Well, it's almost common sense, I would think. I think I probably mentioned when I went to the Dome, a lot of spiritual books had a very similar kind of verse around the walls to show there was some similarity and unity in different religions. So to me, it almost, if you want to live in a reasonable kind of way, treat others you want to be treated. It just makes kind of common sense on how we should be living. And unfortunately, of course, many folks don't. Most of us are probably fairly selfish beings. I'm speaking for myself here rather than for anybody else. But I know in reality, I think about myself more than anybody else in the whole world, basically. I think I said earlier on in the course, I was the centre of the universe and quite enjoyed that most of the time, thinking the world actually revolves around me. But it is certainly a good thing to live that way. And as I say, my Hindu friends had something similar, that was a good way to actually live, to treat others you want to be treated. Do you want to add anything to that? Because I just think it's how we should be living.
Yeah. I'm kind of.
Can we say anything else about maybe what's been going on in America? Because I noticed there's been.
Like one mind. That was exactly what I was going to say.
Fantastic. I've noticed there's been demonstrations in the UK. I think 9,000 folks or something I've read just before coming online actually today have been getting together. That's
a tricky one, isn't it? Because of social distancing, I'd be a bit nervous about going to a demo, but
at the moment,
distancing in place, I'd be there. Absolutely, Christians, people of faith shouldn't stay out of politics. I think we need to stand up against things that are wrong, and this what happened to George Floyd was blatantly wrong on a level. I actually know of a minister, it's been in the Methodist Recorder, so it's public knowledge, a Methodist minister who was in the Extinction Rebellion protests and actually was arrested by police. So she had to answer some questions over that. But I had huge respect for her, actually, because I thought, if we believe that God created the world and created us and we need to look after it, and we only have one planet, then are we prepared to stand up and actually potentially get ourselves arrested to say what's wrong?
I'm actually particularly interested that actually it's happening at the moment, because obviously people of colour have actually been arrested and killed in police stations before, and there's been demonstrations, but they've all kind of petered out, and it hasn't seemed to have gone on. I might be wrong here, but maybe in the current environment, this is, I'm not saying it's good what's happened, but hopefully good is going to come out of this, because people have got maybe time to think a bit and to say, well, I'm going to demonstrate, I'm going to not accept this anymore. Enough is enough, almost. I'm looking for silver linings in what's going on in the world, because I'm struggling with it a lot of the time. I don't know about you, but I am.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about HTMU next week, and
what was that again? HTMU stood for? I can't remember.
I'm going to say that HTMU is the one Christian doctrine that's really, really evidenced in the world. It's really obvious. So it's a little bit of a teaser for you there. But yeah, our world is messed up, and what's happening in America. And I mean, let's face it, racism exists in the UK as well. We all have to examine ourselves and where's the racism in me, and try and root it out. And that's the big challenge.
Yeah, and prejudice against people who are just different in whatever way is unfortunately prevalent, isn't it? We are supposed to be a very tolerant country, but underneath the surface, it can be very difficult for many folks. But we want to give a message of hope here, don't we? I think time is about against us now, Emma. A message of hope.
Time is against us. Yeah, I mean, so message of hope. What's your message of hope then, Andy? What would you say? What's your hope with you in there?
What message of hope? You mean beyond chocolate? You mean?
Shall I go first? Because I put you on the spot there.
Oh yes, please do.
Angry Jesus for me is kind of, weirdly, if you'll bear with me for a moment, kind of a message of hope, because this is saying, actually, this is not okay with God. When we see these awful things happen in the world, God says this is not okay, and that kind of gives me hope that God is angry about it, that God is going to help me and help others do something about it, that things can be better. Yeah.
Well, for me, it's actually there's the laughing Jesus picture, which particularly, as I said before, excites me. Not just a sense of humour, but it's almost like he's got a chuckle that he knows what is really going on, and most of us don't, do we? I think many of us thought we were actually in control of our lives, and this has just shown us the last 8, 9, 10 weeks, whatever it's been, that we're not in charge of our lives. But I've got to hope that Jesus does know what is going on, and God does know what's going on. Far more complicated than I can ever even imagine. But to me, the hope is going to be in Jesus and about God. Because I struggle otherwise if there wasn't a God. I do. Do you want to correct what I've said?
Say that again.
Do you want to correct what I've just said? Make it right. Was it okay?
Not at all.
I just thought I'd ask.
It's all good. It's 3 minutes past 9. We're over time. But I've enjoyed tonight, Andy. I hope you have.
That's been great, actually. I've had the laptop on my lap tonight, which is good. I've got quite nice and warm now. So and next week, we come to the question. Basically, if Jesus died and came back to life, then all is good. If Jesus didn't come back to life, we have a problem as Christians. But we'll leave it till next week. Yeah. If you've got any other questions, please send them to our email account there, and we can do some preparation then. But also we'll do that. I think we're going to go with this format again. Do you agree? We'll do this live on camera now before we finish. I like of chatting and answering some questions as well at the end.
Yeah, and so I just encourage people, if you can't join the live stream, you're welcome to email us in advance, or if you're friends with Andy or I on Facebook, just post us questions or say, "I'll talk about this topic. I'm interested in this." And we're really keen that Life and Soul is something that is addressing what people are interested in, rather than just what we think we want to talk about.
Yeah, and I've certainly got that in my mind, that actually we're here, rather than me having my agenda, we're actually here to work together and discuss things that interest people.
Yeah.
I've certainly got that this week. Taken a few weeks, hasn't it?
Okay, well, I'll see you next week, Andy, and we'll see everyone else next week.
Bye, buddy. Have a good
Bye.
week. Keep safe out there.